Good morning, everyone. My name is Chandana Gopal. I'm a research director at IDC covering enterprise intelligence. We have a great panel today. The topic we're talking about is what is holding you back from actionable insights. Our panelists from KPMG and J&J will talk about common challenges around data modernization and how you can use your data assets to create high-quality data products that can then be generated, that can then generate actionable insights for your organizations. Today, we start off with our first speaker, Danielle Beringer. She is an enterprise technology executive and data integration strategist, driving high-performance agile teams to deliver business value. She's presently a managing director in the KPMG Lighthouse practice, focused on the KPMG modern data platform and sales engineering for go-to-market, positioning, and data analytics services with her clients and expanding data-related alliances. Danielle, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really excited to be here today. All right, who's ready for some data therapy? I promise it's not going to be too painful, but we're going to talk about some really difficult topics that often aren't bridged when it comes to discussing data modernization. What I wanted to start out with today is to go a little bit into the challenges that we see. My prior role before joining KPMG a year and a half ago is I was the chief data officer at Nissan North America for 6 years. Now in dog year, like that's a long time for a chief data officer. So, that's why I use the term data therapy. What we see and what we'll focus on today is the barriers or the pitfalls that are keeping people back from actionable insights. I like to call this a discussion on the Holy Trinity: people, technology, and process. We're going to focus a lot today on the people and process side because that is often the greatest barrier. There is a proliferation of technology, and this wheel is really illustrating where it starts with a technology pain. Perhaps people have over-indexed on the variety of data and analytics tools that they're using in the cloud. Most people are very reticent to sunset legacy business intelligence tools, data wrangling tools. They don't want to upset anyone, even if they're working in a very large organization, and there's only 2 people using an actual tool. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It's very difficult. It's ingrained in the organization. And so the technology variety and the expense of carrying that, the anchor of legacy data that's being dragged into the cloud is really shocking some people. So while we could spend a lot of time talking about the technology, and I will get into what does a modern data ecosystem look like, I really want to focus on what we see as some of the best-in-class success factors for data modernization. Now, before we start, I'm going to give you my definition of data modernization. There are many, but I'm going to read it to you in the hopes that this resonates with you. Danielle's definition of data modernization: the strategic approach for innovative use, accessibility, governance, operations, and value delivery of data in a modern cloud architecture through people, process, and technology process transformation, right? We have to transform the way that we're working with data, the way we're thinking about data. You all know that a data culture is the single greatest determinant in success with data and data for value, as well as it being sustained over time. So these key factors we show on the right, when we look across our client base in any industry, in any domain, we often see these 6 principles. The business vision for data value. Data is a team sport. It is not a sport only for IT or the business. It is one that's played together. And we see data as the language to stitch that together. It's really, really important. We do see organizations that struggle with challenges where they only have certain pockets of business teams that are ready, willing, and able to embrace the oh-so-sexy data governance, right? That are ready to pursue data as a product. You've got some raving fans out there in those lines of business that are ready to do that. But it's not everyone, right? It's an adoption problem. I like to say it's never a technology problem, it's an adoption problem. So an enterprise data management strategy becomes a comfortable way, an on-ramp, so to speak, for people to start to converse and build that data community. If you see pockets of data strategy, everyone has a different data strategy. That doesn't work over time, right? It may work for some point solutions or tactically, but it doesn't really work over time. It certainly will not help when it comes to using data as a product and the data product lifecycle, which we'll also talk a little bit about today. A modern layered architecture. I can't think of a single client that we've ever seen that has nothing, right? They have a huge legacy implementation of a variety of different things, transactional systems, data warehouses, data marts. We really don't want to talk about the volume of spreadsheets that we often see in those environments. And they have clouds, sometimes a single cloud, sometimes multi-cloud, and certainly lots of data integration challenges, right? Whether they're pursuing a more advanced architecture or whether they are simply trying to get their arms around the sprawl. So when we say modern layered architecture, that includes things like everything as a service. It includes data observability. It includes leveraging active and passive metadata on a daily basis to improve the overall operations of that architecture and that ecosystem. Data governance and literacy, my personal love language. It's very hard to advance that. Data literacy and context is key. There are lots of different ways to accomplish that, and we'll talk about a couple best practices. Industrialized delivery. This is making it last over time. I like to say that the team sport of data is like having a new puppy. You get the puppy, you buy the puppy food, the cage and everything. It's for life. Like this is a permanent arrangement. We see organizations that put a lot of energy and momentum into their data programs. Hopefully they measure the business value before, during, and after. But they don't think about the operations it's going to take to actually get it done. They spend a lot of time trying to justify, we need this many data engineers, we need this many data scientists. It's a very front-loaded resource model, but they fail to properly estimate data ops, ML ops, everything ops, FinOps, cloud ops, and that often is a really painful conversation that happens when the project is delivered, and senior executives inevitably are not very happy about that conversation. And then the last one is the commitment to the change journey. Again, sustained change management to be successful with data as a product, data as an asset, and enablement of the data culture, and really change the way people think and operate. We call this our data management spectrum. How many of you have children or yourselves have played Super Mario Brothers? Anyone? Okay. Level 1 is on the left. Level 5 is on the right. You don't get to go to level 5, which is the more advanced, innovative, exciting data monetization, data mesh, data fabric. You have to pass through the levels prior. So one of the first things we do with our clients is we have a little data therapy. We do a data discovery session, and we say, let's talk about what your organization has, and let's light this up like a Christmas tree. Where do you have the presence of some of these best practices? Do you have the table stakes, as we call it, around data architecture and strategy? And most do. And they often have existing analytics in place, traditionally operational reporting with some visual analytics. But we put it in the middle because it really is the tipping point. Love Malcolm Gladwell, if you guys follow. But you want to move into that data accessibility because, again, the presence of 15,000 reports, if no one's using them, really isn't the definition of success. So the data catalog and master data management, metadata management, and the data roles RACI that appear in the second block is really where you need to kind of drive that tipping point over with analytics because that's often how people are interacting the most. But it has to be self-service. So when you start to look at the right, integration, connectors, APIs, data products, that's really where the light bulb turns on for innovation in an organization for a single reason. It's where the compression of people's time occurs. If they were spending 40 hours a week doing data wrangling and 10 hours a week, as a really busy person, doing actual insights generation, if you take that 40 hours and you compress it down to 10 because they're using certified data products, they have a known governance cycle, they're on a data working group and they understand the taxonomy and everything that's in their target operating model. They're working as one team between business and IT. That freed up all of their extra time to do innovation, to do projects that they wouldn't have gotten to for 2 years, to start using data products to create new things. And that's really the messaging is it's not a painful journey from left to right. It's where the efficiency and the compression of the old legacy way of working is really happening and that innovation really comes about. And that's why on the bottom we're showing a very simple way that people often approach a data management council, which is what Johnson & Johnson is going to talk about today with us. And how do you get that data culture? It's having an event like a data expo. It's starting to do data literacy training. It's some very basic things that don't cost a lot of money but do require time investment to open the aperture for an organization about what it means to participate in all these data management activities, but how is it relevant to their job on a day-to-day basis? What are the proactive and reactive activities that become everyone's responsibility, whether they're a data owner, a data steward, a data scientist paired with a data engineer? It's everyone's business. Everyone wants to know what's in it for me. And this is a way to start having that conversation. So much so that I've provided some prompts today to make it a little less painful to get into data therapy. We call this our data value levers. There's two parts to this slide. On the left-hand side, when we talk about data programs, when we talk about any type of initiative that involves data, which I would challenge anyone to find one that doesn't involve data, how do you tie it to business value? We spend so much time and energy talking about data management, data governance, data stewardship, cloud modernization, sunsetting legacy systems, ERP migrations. You have to measure the value before, during, and after any data program, because that, qualitatively on a piece of paper, will get some people excited. Not in a good way always, right? If it's a good value, is the juice worth the squeeze? Very popular expression. But when you tie it to a primary value lever, which usually there's one that's like at the top, whoever the sponsor of the program is, whether it's a business sponsor or an IT sponsor, there's usually one that's the main reason they're pursuing a new application, a new data feed, a new program. But we encourage you to double click and find the secondary, because those are often a little more satiating in the short term while you're achieving the larger value lever that's really the big ROI you were expecting. You have to give people those breadcrumbs of value throughout that program, or it has a very significant chance that it will not be successful because it's going to lose momentum and people aren't going to be as supportive if they don't see, and they're waiting a really long time for those insights. So on the right, when we start to have a data conversation with a client, and I did this in my role as a CDO with my business divisions I was supporting, you start to peel the onion on, in a kind way, like, where do you think you are on the data management spectrum? How widespread is the understanding of your data in your area? Are you partnering with the people that have the contextual knowledge of the data utility? So how many of you regularly use the term data utility? In my definition, that is, you have data products in a data catalog, or you can have data assets of any kind. It doesn't have to be a product. Do people understand how that data is to be used, but do they also understand the do not use list? Like, there is a list of things you should never do with this data. Don't ever blend X with Y. Don't ever provide this data to this third party, right? It is the community kind of definition of the utility. So I love when we see clients that embrace tools where people can have active conversations about how they're using the data. A place where a data scientist can post, hey, this is what I'm working on. I just used these 4 data products and here's what I found. It also spawns a conversation about my favorite hot topic, which is data quality is having a renaissance, right? Generative AI, I've got to say that at least once in this presentation, right? Generative AI is absolutely forcing a data quality renaissance, because people are realizing that without fundamental, certified high-quality data, they will not be successful in training LLMs. They will not be successful in understanding how they can actually reach better outcomes. So some of these questions, again, require self-reflection, but it's an easy way to have a conversation and it not be invasive. People don't generally get defensive. It also tees up, are you making organizational changes, right? We talked about this is mostly a people and process thing. Is the organization committed to starting to think about what are the contemporary roles? Do we have those roles? Are people's job descriptions inclusive of the types of activities they need to do for data governance and stewardship? Are they inclusive of the types of things they need to do if they approach data as a product, which absolutely has a life cycle? Now, one quick comment on that. We find that people, when they start to approach data as a product or a data marketplace or anything where you're actually getting people around a catalog of assets, the data product lifecycle is very familiar to anyone that's ever done the software development lifecycle, right? So if you have business stakeholders that have worked with software developers, they've done requirements, they've gone through, understanding the UX, and they're delivering something, it feels a little familiar to them, right? However, there are many people in the lines of business who are absolutely an important participant in the team sport of data that are not familiar with a software development lifecycle. So it will feel very uncomfortable for them because they may not be aware that they actually need to participate in data quality scorecards, in profiling, in creating a business glossary, right? So I would say, generally, we need to show people grace that they may not know, and it may be uncomfortable for them to say that. We're gonna go with like the Brene Brown, are you ready to be vulnerable with your data? You need to give them a data literacy program. You need to give them a way to upskill, a path, that is prescriptive for them. We strongly believe in persona-led design. Do you have capabilities in your organization that are matched to the persona using them? Data engineer, data architect, data analyst, knowledge worker, data scientist, software engineer, cloud engineer, or any flavor, because every organization has unique names that are made up just for your company that don't really tell what a person's job function is. So a RACI and a data target operating model is the cookbook that helps people know who's doing what is the workflow, and what is the permanent way we're gonna operate around data. And that's really where that question around persona-led design is. I wanted to clarify what I mean by that in the definition. I felt it would be good to maybe show what we see as the ingredients for a data modernization ecosystem. I think these are table stakes for doing data fabric, data mesh, all the things we talk about, generative AI, name your buzzword, it's gonna be something new tomorrow. This is a new way of looking at, and this is inclusive of technology, people, process. So the shared services in community, analytics as a service, integration as a service, development and engineering, all of these things have to be done in a way that is appropriate for your organization. Just like Super Mario Brothers level 1 to 5, not everyone's at a 5. So you have to really think about culturally what's feasible, what is the priority of the organization in looking at the portfolio. One of the biggest pains we see is that everyone wants to do a lot of new things, but they often don't have the full permission from their executive leadership to pursue that. They don't have the skilled resources within their team to pursue it. So let's say you wanted to start doing data observability. Maybe you don't have a data engineer that knows how to use the latest and greatest data observability tools and understand metadata, et cetera. You have an option to grow your own unicorn and upskill your existing workforce, but you have to make a business value case. This is the value if I add this person in the organization in the middle of the fiscal year, even though we didn't budget for it, to help us start to move to some of these contemporary concepts. So again, it is a team sport. It requires very creative thought around how you'll shape teams. When I first became the Chief Data Officer at Nissan, we had a handful of data architects. We had all of the data platforms and systems, and we did not really have a lot more. And over 4 years, we grew to hundreds of people globally, but the only way we were able to do that is incrementally showing the value of each resource, what they were delivering, how we were compressing the way that the company worked. If I had this person, this entire department can become automated if we do a program with them, right? You have to show that value. And it's, I am a software engineer and data engineer by education and by practice. That's not my favorite thing to do. Like, no one really likes to assemble a business value assessment, but you have to do it. I would highly suggest thinking about some of these dimensions of things you want to pursue in a way that you can put a dollar amount on it. The other thing I would recommend is look at your competition. People cannot help themselves when they hear that their biggest competition is doing amazing things with data. It is a very easy way to get in front of an executive audience and say, let's talk about how company X is doing it, and maybe interweave some of those themes into your business case for how you want to pursue some of these efforts. I would say that another important theme that is organizational transformation is that occurs everywhere. So it's not just asking business areas that are consuming data to change. It's looking at your IT organization and saying, do we have the right people lined up? There's always new technology. I'm a big advocate for enterprise architecture, and we're really excited to have one of our clients here today that leads enterprise architecture at Campbell's, in addition to our panel from Johnson & Johnson, to talk about some of the things where how are we teeing up the organization for success? Again, people and process over technology. Although I'd be happy to have a very long conversation about technology with any of you after we do this. The last thing I wanted to show is what we call our data governance value chain. If you think about data modernization, technology, people, process, and start thinking about maybe things that most people don't get excited about, and put it in a value context, you'll definitely get more people behind it. So in the context of the data governance value chain, I'm just showing some simple examples. Imagine these as those levers. Could you quantify in your organization and put a number in every box of how you are actually impacting the organization, growing the organization, driving it towards innovation by putting some of these things into place? When you make it a value conversation, it really changes the way people perceive that. I also recommend doing scorecarding on the value that your data and analytics organization is delivering on a monthly basis. Have something where you're communicating, this is what we've been doing this month, this is what's new, here's changes to our catalog. If you do that, you really start to get that data community, and you want to have live interaction with folks to do that. So I would recommend some sort of a cascade or an event, and that really starts to get that data culture growing. The last thing that I wanted to close with for my section of actionable insights is a question that I ask myself all the time. Does your data spur people to action for the right outcome? Is there a call to action for everything that you're doing with your data? Really think about, is it moving the needle? And if it's not, I would highly recommend pruning, data minimization, or really rethinking that anchor that you might be carrying of old people, technology, and process into the future. You're going to be a lot more nimble if you really rethink that. So with that, I'd like to pass it to our client, Johnson & Johnson. I'm so excited to have them here today to talk about their Data Management Council and the things that they've done to enact a data culture. Without further ado, I'm going to have Matt and Ajay introduce themselves.
Great, thank you, Danielle. I want to first confirm that you're able to hear us clearly.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hey, hi everyone. Sorry that we could not be there in person. I want to let you know that both Matt and I tried very hard. Our flights got canceled. Then we were going to take flights this morning. That got delayed. But we're very happy to be here to share our story and insights, and also learn from all of your experiences. So I'll do an introduction quickly, and then Matt will introduce himself when he starts speaking. So I'm a Senior Vice President in Johnson & Johnson. I lead a group called Strategy and Business Services, which is a part of our overall global services team. My team is responsible for large enterprise-wide transformations, and we manage several key capabilities in the digital, data, project management, and change management space. And I'm also the co-chair for J&J's Enterprise Intelligent Automation Council and Data Management Council. So today, as we go through our story, we'll do it in 3 segments. We'll share some key insights first, then we'll talk about how we responded to that with our Data Management Council, and then in the end, we'll share some best practices, our experience, hoping that they can help you, and would love to learn any insights that you may have for us as well. So Matt, if you could please go to the next slide. So Danielle, loved your insights and very relatable, very consistent with the experiences that we had as well. And what we saw in J&J is that we were not really able to get meaningful insights from our data, integrate into our decision-making process for a multitude of reasons. And some of them are tied to the complexity of J&J. It's a large corporation, the scope and scale that we have, but also because of lack of critical data management capabilities and some foundational elements like data quality, data governance, and data ownership. The second insight I'll share is that we think about data even today in a very siloed fashion. So as folks start kicking off new programs and they're thinking about things from the orientation of their function or their sector, they go about building capabilities that don't talk to each other. And there's a lot of redundancy in the work that we are trying to drive. And as a result, there's a lot of opportunities to connect them together in order to create a consistent view that we are then able to leverage for insights generation and decision making. And then finally, when you think about some of the advancements that Danielle talked about on the data spectrum, we've struggled with keeping at pace for reasons that I talked about, but also because we don't have a cohesive approach where we are thinking about things like change management, data literacy, and upskilling our talent for the new frontier. So with all of those insights, and started sharing it with our executive committee, because what we started seeing is that some of these challenges were impacting our transformations. And as we were starting to do things like intelligent automation, data sciences, generative AI, data very quickly became a big rate limiter for us. So we already have two councils in place. One is focused on intelligent automation, where we are looking to create about $1 billion of value by 2025. Then we have a data sciences council with a very similar goal. And what we recently got alignment from our executive committee for is to start a data management council, recognizing that it's so foundational and fundamental for all of our success in the digital acceleration space and our transformations. So let me hand it over to Matt, who will talk about our Enterprise Data Management Council.
Thanks, Ajay. Hi, everyone. Matt Barnett. I am in Ajay's organization within Johnson & Johnson, and I am the Senior Director for our Data Strategy and Excellence Group. And as Ajay mentioned, some of the challenges that really stopped us from getting to actionable insights that was around our lack of cohesive enterprise approach to data. And that was when we looked at a lot of the transformations, digital initiatives that were happening, all things happening good in pockets in our sectors and our functions, but we didn't have a cohesive kind of enterprise view and focus to bring that together to really drive scale and speed across these major transformations. As well as we look at some of our M&A efforts and our risk file data, we really needed to amplify what we were doing and how we were doing that and change the ways we were working. The other piece, and then Danielle hit this, is things like the AI have sprung into the forefront. We are, with our council, able to quickly adapt to the needs, to the excitement that's around that, to really bring forward cross-functional representation to have the conversations, how to approach practices like that. The other piece, when we looked at these councils, of what we really wanted to bring forward is really democratizing the data to be able to allow for quicker analytics, quicker initiatives to drive insights. As Ajay said, we have this Data Science Council, Intelligent Automation Council, which have goals and objectives of their own, and data is really a foundational part of that to accelerate and amplify what they're doing and really drive forward the value cases that they've built as a partnership. When we look across the council that's been stood up, and we're really on our infancy. We've started at the beginning of this year, but we already see tremendous opportunities for a cross-functional council to really drive incremental value across the J&J enterprise. And what we've done is really started to take that council as it's structured and embed it into these large transformational programs that we have running. We have multiple multi-year transformation programs, and Danielle hit on a couple of the types of transformations. We have an ERP transformation, we have a financial simplification, we have a payroll overhaul transformation. So these large pieces that all are data at its core, we are embedding the council as the essential quarterback across those data work streams to drive value and efficiencies throughout. We also see capabilities within the council that need to be stood up and ultimately delivered to create value in and of itself. One of those, and I'll mention a few, is around data acquisition. So we see a high dollar value across the J&J landscape towards data acquisition, and we see that being an opportunity for us to not necessarily do a cost play of reducing the overall dollar value, but really maximizing the dollars that we put in this space around things like how we leverage licensing, negotiation power, visibility across our sectors and our functions that doesn't exist today. The other capabilities that I'll mention is we are also looking at an enterprise maturity framework where we are able to now measure apples to apples across the entire complex organization of J&J to look at where we are at currently, what are our plans to enhance our maturity, as well as really leverage the pockets of good things that are happening and really amplify and leverage the best practices that are done in a specific function across the entire council. As I jump to this next slide, we are looking at changing the ways of working and looking at things like how do we start to create data products? How do we do that across the data mesh? I loved when Danielle talked about the modern layered architecture. It is something that we are looking at holistically across the council to really look at our landscape of technologies and tools. And we are across the entire piece of what Danielle talked about. We have legacy systems, we have on-prem, we have cloud, we have multi-cloud. It's all within the four walls of J&J, and we need to now focus in terms of building out that modern ecosystem and that modern layered architecture to really amplify where we want to head holistically moving forward. The other pieces of what we're pulling in from the council is really trying to leverage external leadership, external lens, and bringing in these new ways of thinking into our thought process and the way that we build this council, but to really build a scalable model, to really leverage everything that's happening in this space to drive forward a new approach for J&J. We've also doubled down a little bit on data quality, and Danielle also mentioned that, looking at how do we drive data quality for the organization? How do we set the standard and the bar in terms of what that means, and how do we enable data quality to create value through those councils that we mentioned? The last thing that I'll mention before I turn it back over to Ajay to walk through the actual council structure and some of the insights that we've got there is we are looking at building a 3E value framework. And when I say 3E, that really encompasses our focus on efficiency, effectiveness, and experience. And that's how we're looking at the data council, both the use cases that are coming up through the functions and sectors themselves, and also those capabilities that will deliver value. And we're looking at how do we actually create value for the organization through data, but also how do we enable value for the organization. We are looking at those as two pockets, and I think Ajay mentioned in the IA space, we're looking at a $1 billion target goal. We are doing the same within the data or foundational council to look at what our goals should be in terms of the value we should be creating through insights, through data products, through building out new capabilities and services. So Jay, I'll turn it back over to you to talk a little bit about best practices and how the structure of the organization or the council set up.
Thanks, Matt. So as Matt said, I'll highlight how our council is set up and then share best practices, and then we can go into the panel section of our time together. I'll start at the center where you'll see some of the key areas that this council is focused on, and those are the items that we've already talked about. Areas like data quality, areas like data literacy, data governance, and external lens. So we have picked those areas that, if done properly across all of our sectors and functions, are really going to help move the needle and improve our speed to value with data and help us become a data-driven organization. What we have not done is mention the names of the players who are involved on the left side and the right side. But as I said, this is co-led by myself, and my co-chair is the CIO of our corporate functions from IT. And then our two sponsors are from our executive committee. One is our CIO and the other person is our CFO. So this has executive level sponsorship, highest level sponsorship. It has been reviewed with our board as well. The way the council is structured is on the left side, you see all the participants from all the sectors and functions. We've got commercial, supply chain, R&D, all the enabling functions there. And all the members who are representing these functions are VP level or above that have been picked by our executive committee with the focus that we are putting on it. And what you see on the right are all the capabilities that we believe that we'll need to stand up or leverage if it already exists in J&J to help enable the folks on the left side with what their business goals are by leveraging some of the foundational capabilities that this council is going to create in the center. And I couldn't emphasize what Danielle said earlier more, that this clearly is a team sport. So collaboration and being aligned on a common goal becomes extremely critical. So let me talk about some of the best practices, and I'm sharing best practices that have worked really well for us with Intelligent Automation Council that has been in existence for 3 years. Same thing with data sciences, and we've now leveraged that for what we are doing for data management. And as Matt said, we are 3 months old. First and foremost is ensuring that your executive leadership team understands the importance of data. So education and then earning their sponsorship becomes very critical. And you have to talk to them in the form, in a way that they understand the implications. And that's where we found the 3E framework to be very helpful. How can better data quality improve the experience of our employees, our customers, our suppliers, and all the patients and consumers that we serve? How is it going to make our processes more effective, where our forecasting becomes better? As an example, the number of errors we have goes down, and it also helps them, from an efficiency standpoint. Secondly, Danielle talked about the adoption problem, right? So for us, this is literally rewiring how J&J works from a data standpoint. Significant change in ways of thinking, ways of working, a lot of behaviors that need to be changed. We need to ensure that there's a very clear association between what we are doing with the Data Council to overall J&J's purpose. So you see change management and communications as a key capability on the right side of the structure. So we have a dedicated person who's a part of our team, who's involved and thinking about how to manage change right from the get-go, how to ensure that we are communicating the success stories effectively. You heard me talk about how we have a very strong partnership with IT. So it is me and my co-chair from IT who run this council together. Then Matt has a similar partnership with the person who the part of our CIO. And then the right, you see all the capabilities there are co-owned by Matt and many members of our IT team. So again, the team sport concept, but it is co-led by business and by IT. I already talked about ensuring that you're picking the right leaders on the left side. So we had to define the criteria, what level, what their accountabilities would be, how would we expect them to keep their functional leadership teams in the loop, what would they have to share with the council, what will we share with them so that it gets cascaded effectively. We talked about the 3E value, but one of the other points that I'll also share is that we are using, I would say, a hybrid approach for upping our value case. What does that mean? As we work with each of the functional leaders on the left side, we are trying to understand what the goals and objectives are for 2023 plus. And then we are trying to figure out which ones out of those are highly dependent on good quality data. So that's how we identify the areas where we can have the most impact at the highest level for J&J. But then as each of these groups create use cases, as Matt was saying, we use the 3E approach to understand what exactly are they going to drive for J&J and for the Credo stakeholders we serve as a way to prioritize, and then we bring that together to measure our value. We talked about modern approach, and we use external lens. So we work with our partners like KPMG. We talk to our peers. We talk to our technology providers to get insights on what they're doing. And we also talk to our peers through a lot of different forums that we are a part of to help ensure that we are always thinking about understanding what are the best practices and what's the best way to go about doing it. And I'll end with the final one, which is, it's important that all 136,000 employees in J&J are literate on data, because they are either producers or consumers of data. How do we get them to a place where they understand the importance of data and how good quality data is going to help us serve all the customers that we serve more effectively, help drive value for J&J? And it becomes extremely critical for areas like generative AI and sustainability. So really building that data community that you heard Danielle talk about. So let me stop there. Danielle, want to pass it back to you. I hope that made sense, and then maybe we can go into a panel.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ajay and Matt. I love seeing what it looks like in the wild, right? To see a data target operating model. I use another analogy. It's my last one of the day, I think. Think of a data target operating model as a book about riding a bike. Actually doing that is riding the bike. So I encourage all of you to ride the bike, put it into action. Great examples from today from Johnson & Johnson. I'm really excited to welcome our moderator, my colleague Sreekar Khrishna, and our guest, Lena Kryzlowski from Campbell's. They'll both introduce themselves, and we'll get into a panel discussion. It's going to be round robin. We have some prompted questions, and hopefully we'll have time for questions from the audience. Lena?
Thank you very much, Danielle, and thank you both from J&J and Lena from Campbell. I'm Sreekar Khrishna. I'm one of the partners at KPMG. I lead our AI practice. Super excited to be here to moderate the panel. Without data, there is no AI, so I kind of lean into the experts here in the room. So to be honored to be here asking questions from these gentlemen and also from the ladies. To start off the panel, maybe Lena, if you can introduce yourself and tell us more about Campbell, that would be awesome.
Sure, I'm Lena Kryslowski. I lead Enterprise Architecture Office at Campbell's. And Campbell's is in the middle of the digital transformation, where I'm sure a very common scenario for everybody. We're transforming everything at the same time. And data, of course, is at the center of that transformation. For us, it's a very challenging journey. We are moving into the, all the modern concepts around the data, the platforms, the technologies. Data is a product. So, this is very exciting for where we are. It also is very challenging because, you will hear me saying often, digital transformation is not about technology. Technology is not a problem, it's a tool. Right? And then there are multiple technologies that are available on the market that do everything under the sun. But to Danielle's point and to the topic actually into this conversation, it's all about cultural change. It's about how we do business, and it's also about how people communicate the outcomes and deliver the value, how technology delivers the value.
No, that's great, Lena. Maybe you can add more about how Campbell is using data modernization. We heard from J&J, we heard from Danielle. Can you add a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of the background. When COVID happened, I'm sure everybody had the same challenge. At Campbell's, we have created the, I would say, reporting platform using, pretty advanced technology, data warehousing technology, but it became quickly a reporting platform. People didn't have time to do things right, so they did things fast, right? And so now we have a lot of data. I don't know how many reports, how many dashboards, how many people who use them. So we have, pretty much the environment where it became not just unmanageable, but also, we are unable to deliver the insights and use that environment, to kind of expand AI usage, things like that. So we had to re-architect from the technology perspective. But we are moving. So technology is very simple. I would say that pretty standard. We're moving to the cloud platform, into the data lakehouse architecture. We are moving into the data products concept. And the big advantage for Campbell's is that we don't have to necessarily remediate immediately everything that we have. So the approach that we have chosen to take is like, let's take smaller bites, let's do things right, while we keep running our legacy environments to serve the business and so forth. So that is an approach we took, and my position into the technology transformation in general, and that includes data. Reusability is the name of the game. So if you have to define what is it that we are doing, right, from the technology perspective, we are delivering business value by creating reusable components of anything. So Danielle talked about everything as a service. That's what it means, right? So everything needs to be reusable, and that's where the data products in the data world come in. Again, the approach to how we look at data, I think, has to change in general, because if we're saying that data is a product, we need to have an organization that runs products. Mm-hmm. And that means that you have a product owner. That means that you have executive alignment to the area where, those products.
Recording in progress.
Are supposed to serve, right? And so going back into the concept, it's all about people and the processes, much less about technology.
Not sure if Matt and Ajay are still with us. Can you guys hear me, Matt or Ajay? They were disconnected.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Oh,
There they are.
okay, they're able to hear. So we can't see your video, but I'll go ahead and ask the question. Oh, there you go. It's working now. Matt and Ajay, it was really enlightening to see the Data Management Council and the pathway you guys have laid out. And Ajay, I heard you say that a lot of the folks in the council are the VPs and the SVPs. How are you guys seeing the adoption go all the way down to the employees who are going to use these things? What's your take on that?
Matt, you want to start or?
Sure. So what we actually have underneath that, the left-hand side of the council is what we call functional delegates. So while on the council itself is VPs and above, they've actually nominated members of their team across their function or sector that are involved in a functional delegate forum as well. So we are engaged at multiple levels of the organization, and we're really seeing at this point very high level adoption, very high level of excitement of what the council can deliver, and we're seeing every day actually new people come up from our two main sectors, pharma and medical devices, where they're coming with their ideas, with their challenge, their pain points, new initiatives that they're starting that have data at the center. So we're seeing a lot of good adoption, and we're seeing it actually at all levels of the organization.
Thanks, Matt. I'll add 2 points. One, not related to the question, but I want to say this because I know, Danielle, you and I talked about this, that now that we are not there, we won't have an opportunity to connect with many of you. Feel free to reach out to me or Matt via LinkedIn. We're very happy to get any insights from you, answer any questions, or through the KPMG team. What I'll add to what Matt said is that there's a leadership aspect here as well. And, I call it the choice between and versus or. And what we found in the data space was that there were a lot of governance bodies, there were community of practices, and then saying that what we were trying to do at this level is special than what they were doing. We said, we need everyone to work together. So we did an inventory of everything that exists. We have embraced them, and we are ensuring that we are using the energy from those forums also to inform what we are doing and using them as a way to drive further penetration and adoption by having them help with Cascade.
Awesome. Maybe Danielle, I'll start with you with the CDO question, right? I think it's now become very clear that the data is the essential part of the whole business. How do you see the data organization bringing everybody from the organization together and work as a single unit? Because I feel like data is the internal part of the organization.
Yeah, I would say I got a really important piece of advice as Chief Data Officer, I reported to the CIO, and one of the first things he said to me was, make sure you bring people along on the journey. Like, this is a long road, there's a lot of chapters here, there's a lot of things we have to do. So one of the first things we did to get advocacy from the lines of business that were raising their hands to say, I want to do data and analytics different, is we did a data expo. It was on one of my slides, and I believe it was one of the singular events that actually kicked off things properly. We brought together, invited everybody in the building at headquarters. We had hundreds of people attend, and we opened the data catalog for the company and said, these are all the data assets we have. It was manually done. It wasn't done using a fancy tool. We had our data architects and people who were supporting those data assets, and we had business stakeholders present how they were currently using data assets in the company. So it was just like going to it. We brought the technology conference to the people. We did it on site. This was before the pandemic. And in that one day, we actually picked a data asset that we believe the majority of the people that were there were using. And we got everyone in a room, and we pulled up the catalog. We said, how many people in this room are using this item at the top? And every single person in the room raised their hand, and they were shocked because they had no idea. And then we asked them, how many of you are doing that in a spreadsheet or in a derived manner? And unfortunately, there were a lot of hands up. And so that data self-awareness exercise, we used it as a forum to say, this is what this effort is about. It's not about us putting heavy governance on people or making everyone miserable. we have a fundamental data culture that we want to form here, and getting people together for one day with multiple tracks where they could take some classes on some of the technology we were offering. They could meet with data architects to understand the data assets. They could go to a lab and interact and experiment with data. We got so much value from that because it really made it something that felt like a community. And I would say, as a new CDO at the time, that just went a really long way to getting people to understand our thinking, how we wanted to move forward, and then people felt like they had ownership in it. So that would be a recommendation for establishing, because it's not a popular subject. There are people who are resistant. You can't take it personally, but finding a way to bring people along on the journey is essential.
Oh, thank you very much, Danielle. Lena, maybe a similar question to you. As you have seen, Campbell digitize and go through this transformation, what are some of the pitfalls you have seen with data management, especially, or data in general, I would say?
Yeah, so I would say organizationally, people who are innovators are not necessarily thinking the same way as people who are executors. So in any effort like this, especially with data, you want to have the organization that is really diverse from that from the skill set perspective. You want to have people who are innovators, who are maybe kind of edge technology experts, who want to have fun and figure out the new things, right? But at the end of the day, you need to land the plane. And you have to do it within the budget and within the committed time frame. Nobody canceled that with data products, right? Or with cloud architecture, with all the cool generative AI, all of the cool stuff that we're doing and we want to be doing to help the business. But I think we'll have to remember all of this cool technology, and I'm a technologist at heart, right? But all of the cool technologies comes, the purpose of this technology is to actually help to do things faster, better, and cheaper, right? So that to me is big thing. One of our challenges at Campbell's, right? We need people and we need teams who have very execution mindset. Get it done, right? Now, then you have, of course, all of the things that we talked about. Technology has to work. And it has to work, it has to be flexible, it has to be able to integrate data assets, it has to be able to present data assets, it has to be able to democratize data assets. People actually want to make it very easy. Like you want to make it very easy for your business, right? That is technology.
Got it. Perfect. Ajay and Matt, Ajay, I heard you say 136,000 employees. I mean, that's impressive number to make an impact upon. Can you guys talk more about how are you measuring success, more at the council level, I mean, when it comes to the executives, and down at the adoption level when it comes to the employees? Can you share some ideas that you guys have on measuring success around this? I know it's only a 3-month program, but
So I can start there, right? But I think when we're looking at measuring success, right? So one of the pieces that we know we need to be able to show is actual value creation, right? And so as we build those use cases, as we look at embedding ourselves in major transformations, it's about pulling through the value of data. And we know that's hard, right? What is the value of data quality, right? It's very hard to put pen to paper on that. But what we're looking at in that framework we talked about is not just about the concrete dollars, right? But we can build concrete dollars out of things like data acquisition, but also how do we enable, right? If we're building data products that enable either more repeatable or faster time to insights, we can, quote unquote, take credit for pieces of that revenue lift that the data science team drives, right? We enable that, and we're building that into our 3E framework. So that's how we really see building the success of the data council itself is building value for J&J holistically, but also in this cross-functional coalition that's been built and really now kind of marching forward into the new frontier as one data organization as opposed to probably 20 to 25. Ajay, anything to add?
Yeah, a couple of other things I'll add is you heard Matt talk about how we are planning to use the FAIR framework to measure our data maturity. So we are doing some baselining now, and we'll have some goals against them to show that we are improving, and we'll measure that, which becomes very black and white. One of the ways in which we have looked at other councils is we also focus on are we taking the right steps or driving the right activity, which in the long run is going to create the right outcome. And one of them is data literacy. And we will go through the process of partnering with a multitude of external partners to create the right content for different levels of consumption, as we have done in other areas, make them available and try to get to more than 95% of our talent, which we know is going to help us in the long run. And then finally, we do know that if we are currently slowed down because of issues associated with data in our transformations, in our digital agenda, we are going to be able to show that we are able to drive pace there. So I think it'll be a combination of those 3 or 4 areas. And as you said, we have just got it started. And in this quarter, we are in the process of pulling together our framework to get alignment from all the stakeholders. But those are some preliminary thoughts. And again, ideas from anyone else offline.
Got it.
I have, and just to follow up on that, so when we were talking about, what are the things you can put in place that might ease the friction of, being in a position to measure metrics and KPIs, I would recommend that you have a list of people, technology, and process KPIs that are agreed upon by the data working group. I'll give some examples. It starts with, sometimes people are like, oh, how many data scientists do you have in a team? That's not a good metric, right? But what is the value they're delivering? Are you shortening the time to insights? What's the average turnaround time for a data product to be curated? How many people are certified in your data literacy program? Is it progressive? Do you have something like you start as an advocate, you become a champion, and then you become a practitioner, right? Is there a way for people to progress? How many people are running reports? What percentage of reports in a business area are run on certified data products or legacy data products? How many data products and old systems are being sunset in an additional area? What is the cost compression or cost takeout as a result of that? So if you can get an agreed upon set of people, process, and technology metrics, that absolutely gets the attention of your C-suite, especially when they can look across every business division measuring themselves on the same set of metrics. And maybe you choose one set to put into action in year 1, and then it changes in year 2, because as we know, information that's satiating to people initially when you're at a lower maturity, the bar is always being raised. So I think having those set metrics memorialized and certainly changing over time is a great way to make everyone accountable and participate in the team sport of data.
And something around data deletion, right? How much data should we delete?
Please, data minimization and data pruning, please. Yeah. It's very important.
All right, I have 4 minutes left, and I have 4 participants. I cannot finish this moderation without a generative AI question. Unless the audience have any questions around generative AI, I would love to invite you guys to ask that question. Or anything else, for that matter of fact.
Let's go with the question. We'll see what.
Okay, why don't we say, with generative AI being on everybody's minds, what's your guys' take on how this is gonna impact the data management or the management council? Maybe I'll start with Danielle, then Lena.
I'll go super quick. Yeah, we'll do speed round.
Yeah.
Prompted everything. All of your customer expectations, client, they're gonna expect everything to look and feel and have a prompt. So whatever the UX is that you're designing, however you're presenting data, make it as easy as possible, because they're gonna want it to work like ChatGPT that they sat at home on 7 hours the night before, right? Data observability, metadata is king. And I think, again, data quality will have a renaissance, and synthetic data. Synthetic data and privacy-enhancing technologies are the future for how large language models will be trained. So I'm a big advocate for that.
Cool. Lena?
Yeah, big advocate as well. Security is a challenge. Always will be. So the technology focus, I think, will be there on how you make this secure, but also should make our life easier, right? So instead of creating a lot of those insights, we're just gonna ask, generative AI to generate it for us, right? So all of the little things that people are doing today to achieve simple tasks will be automated. So I'm very excited about that.
Great. Ajay?
Yeah, beyond what has been said, we believe that bias is a big topic, and that is something that can be managed at a data level, can play a big role there. And as we think about driving more consumption of the insights that our data can generate, we believe that generative AI can play a big role there in amplifying the impact of our data, in addition to data playing a big role in making generative AI successful.
Got it. And Matt?
Yeah, I think Danielle actually hit on the biggest one for me earlier, right? Is data quality and just generally foundational data management practices are going to come back into the forefront of being absolutely critical. And data practitioners are going to have to look at it in a new way from the past, for sure.
And I think there's going to be a burst of creativity, right? So when you're compressing people's time, it's automated, they're more effective. I think there's really going to be this very interesting creative use of data, in many different ways. So I would say, have an incubation strategy, have a way to protect resources, to do experimentation, because I think that's really a very exciting new wave.
And the students that we're bringing, interns, right? The new blood, new people, young people, they will be developing this stuff very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I want to say it's 11 o'clock. Thank you so much, Ajay, Matt, for joining us. I know you guys tried hard to come here. Thanks once again. Lena, thank you for stepping in last minute to be on the panel. And thanks, audience, for being here.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.